hired a woman with a dark past to care for my silent son, never realizing she was hiding a secret that could dismantle a massive organized scheme. When radicals stormed our home to frame us for a crime carrying an enormous term, my son finally broke his silence with a warning that our own family was behind the hunt. I didn't hire Elena because I'm a saint who believes in second chances. I hired her because I was drowning. My 6-year-old son, Leo, hadn't spoken a single word in 3 years. Not since the night the world fell apart and his mother didn't come home. Silence is a heavy thing to live with. It settles in the corners of the rooms like dust, suffocating everything. I'd been through 12 nannies in 18 months. Some quit because they couldn't handle a child who stared through them as if they were made of glass. Others I fired because I caught them scrolling on their phones while Leo sat in a corner rocking back and forth. Then came Elena. She didn't look like the other candidates. She wore a faded denim jacket. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, no-nonsense bun, and her eyes had the weary look of someone who had seen the bottom of a hole and climbed out of it. When I checked her background, the agency flagged her immediately. She had a record. She had spent 5 years in a correctional facility for her involvement in what the court called an organized scheme involving prohibited substances. She was a convicted felon, a woman who had been part of a group that the law didn't take lightly. Any sane father would have shredded her resume. But during the interview, something happened. Leo, who usually avoided human contact like it was a physical blow, walked straight up to her. He didn't hide behind my legs. He didn't look at the floor. He tugged on the sleeve of her jacket and pointed to his drawing of a bird with broken wings. Elena didn't coo or baby him. She just knelt down, looked him in the eye, and whispered, "I know how it feels to be stuck in a cage, little man. We'll find a way to fly." I hired her on the spot. My sister thought I was insane. "You're bringing a criminal into your house? Someone who was part of a criminal network?" she screamed over the phone. I didn't care. For the first time in years, Leo had smiled. The first few weeks were a revelation. Elena was disciplined, quiet, and incredibly observant. She didn't push Leo to talk. She just existed alongside him. She cooked meals that actually had color in them, and she kept the house with a military-grade precision that suggested she was used to strict routines. I started to relax. I started to think that maybe, just maybe, her past was exactly that, the past. She told me she had been young and desperate, caught up in a network that used her as a courier for prohibited substances. She said she had paid her debt to society and just wanted a life where no one looked at her like she was a monster. But then, the small things started happening. I'd come home and find a strange car idling at the end of our driveway, only for it to speed off the moment I pulled in. I found a burner phone hidden in the laundry room, tucked inside a box of detergent. When I confronted Elena about it, she turned pale, her hands shaking as she took it from me. "It's just for my parole officer," she lied. I knew it was a lie because I'm a corporate lawyer. I know what guilt looks like. One Tuesday, I came home early because a meeting had been canceled. The house was deathly quiet. I walked up the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs for a reason I couldn't explain. As I approached Leo's room, I heard a sound that made me stop dead in my tracks. It was a voice, low, rhythmic, and melodic. "The walls have ears, and the shadows have eyes," the voice whispered. "But the secret stays in the box, doesn't it, Leo?" It was Elena, but she wasn't talking to a child. She was talking to a confidant. I pushed the door open an inch. Elena was sitting on the floor, and Leo was sitting in front of her, holding a small, rusted metal tin I'd never seen before. Inside weren't toys. There were several small, transparent packets filled with a prohibited substance and a series of handwritten notes with names of people I recognized from the local news, high-ranking officials. Elena looked up, her face draining of all color. Leo didn't look at me. He looked at the tin, then at Elena, and then, for the first time in 3 years, he opened his mouth. His voice was raspy, like gravel grinding together. "They're coming for us, Dad," he whispered. "The men from the group, they're already at the door." At that exact moment, the heavy thud of a boot hitting our front door echoed through the house, followed by the sound of shattering glass. Elena grabbed Leo, her eyes filled with a terrifying mix of regret and resolve, and looked at me. "I didn't bring this here to hurt him," she gasped. "I brought it here to hide it from them, but they found me." The world shattered with the sound of that door. I didn't have time to process the miracle of Leo's voice before the reality of our situation crashed down on us. Elena didn't scream. She didn't panic. She moved with a cold, calculated efficiency that terrified me more than the men downstairs. She grabbed Leo by the waist and shoved him toward the back of my walk-in closet. "Move the floorboard, Leo, now!" she hissed. My son, the boy I thought was fragile and broken, dropped to his knees and pulled up a section of the hardwood I didn't even know was loose. Underneath was a cavity containing a small bag and what looked like a piece of illegal weapon hardware. I stood there, frozen, as heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. "Elena, what is this? Who are they?" I whispered, my voice trembling. She looked at me, and for a second the mask of the humble nanny slipped. "They are the leftovers of the organized scheme I tried to bury," she said, her voice like steel. "I didn't just carry those packets for them, Mark. I saw who was buying them. I saw the faces of the people who run this city. That tin, it's the insurance policy they've been hunting for 5 years." She pushed me toward the hole in the floor. "Get in. If they find you with that tin, they won't just kill you. They'll make sure you face an enormous term for a serious charge you didn't commit. They frame people, Mark. It's what they do." We scrambled into the narrow crawl space just as the bedroom door was kicked off its hinges. From my vantage point, through a tiny crack in the floorboards, I saw 3 men enter. They weren't common street criminals. They wore tactical gear and moved with professional precision. They were radicals. The kind of men who worked for the network Elena had mentioned, people who operated in the shadows of the law. "She's here," one of them said, his voice a low growl. "The car is in the driveway. Find the girl and the boy, and find the ledger." The ledger. I looked at the rusted tin in Leo's hands. It wasn't just filled with prohibited substances. There was a folded piece of parchment at the bottom, covered in names, dates, and bank account numbers. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at Leo. He was staring at the floorboards above us, his small hand gripping Elena's jacket. He wasn't crying. He looked prepared. "How does he know what to do?" I mouthed to Elena. She leaned in close to my ear, her breath warm but her words ice cold. "I've been training him, Mark. I knew they'd find us eventually. He's been my silent partner. He didn't stop talking because of the trauma of his mother's death. He stopped talking because he heard something he wasn't supposed to hear the night she died. He didn't tell you because he was trying to protect you. He's been waiting for me to show up." My head spun. My entire life, the last 3 years of mourning, the doctors, the silence, it was all a lie. My son hadn't been broken. He had been hiding. And the woman I had hired to care for him was the only person in the world who knew the truth. One of the men downstairs shouted, "Boss, I found the hidden phone." "Burn the house," another voice commanded, a voice that made my blood turn to ice. It was a voice I recognized. It was smooth, authoritative, and deeply familiar. Elena's eyes widened. She knew that voice, too. She grabbed a small canister from her bag, something that looked like an incendiary device but was likely a tool of her former trade, and signaled for us to move toward the back exit of the crawl space, which led to the garage. We moved like shadows, crawling through the dust and the dark. As we reached the heavy steel door of the garage, I paused. I had to know. I looked through the small, reinforced glass window that looked out onto the driveway. A black SUV sat idling, its headlights cutting through the evening mist. A man stood by the driver's side door, lighting a cigarette. The orange glow of the lighter illuminated his face. I gasped, nearly choking on my own breath. The man leading the radicals, the man who had just ordered our house to be burned to the ground, was my own brother-in-law, Thomas. He was the one who had screamed at me for hiring an ex-con. He wasn't worried about Leo's safety. He was worried that Elena would recognize him. But as the first lick of flame began to curl up the stairs of my home, Thomas didn't look toward the house. He looked toward the garage. He pulled a radio from his belt and spoke into it, his eyes locking onto the very window I was peering through. "They're in the garage," Thomas said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "And tell the others to get the canisters ready. We're not just killing them. We're going to make this look like a massive lab explosion. By tomorrow, Mark will be the face of the biggest criminal network in the state, and I'll be the grieving hero who tried to save him." Elena grabbed my arm, her grip bruising. "We have to go now." "But Mark, there's something you need to know about Thomas. He wasn't just part of the scheme. He's the one who gave the order to move your wife out of the way 3 years ago." The words hit me like a physical blow, more devastating than the smoke beginning to fill the hallway. Thomas, my wife's brother, the man who had sat at our dinner table every Sunday, who had held me while I sobbed at her funeral. He hadn't just been part of the organized scheme. He was the one who had orchestrated her removal because she had stumbled upon his secret life. My grief, which had felt like a heavy, cold weight for 3 years, suddenly ignited into a sharp, white-hot blade of fury. Elena saw the shift in my eyes. She grabbed my shoulders, her grip bruisingly tight. "Not now, Mark. If you let that anger take over, we're dead. We survive first, then we destroy him." The garage was filling with the sharp chemical smell of gasoline. Outside, the radicals were positioning themselves, their shadows flickering against the garage windows. Elena reached into the small bag Leo had pulled from the floorboards and retrieved a specialized tactical device. A breaching charge she'd clearly kept for an emergency she hoped would never come. "When this goes off, we run for the back fence. There's a drainage pipe that leads to the woods. Leo knows the way. He's been practicing this game with me for months." "Wait," I said, my voice rasping. "The ledger. If we leave it, he wins. He'll just burn the evidence and walk away as the hero who tried to save us from our own criminality." Leo stepped forward, the rusted metal tin clutched to his chest. "I have it, Dad," he said. His voice was gaining strength, the years of silence falling away like old skin. "He's not taking anything else from us. Not ever." Elena didn't waste another second. She set the device against the side service door. "Cover your ears." The explosion wasn't a roar. It was a localized, high-pressure burst that blew the door clean off its hinges and sent a cloud of dust and debris into the faces of the men waiting outside. Before the radicals could recover, Elena was out, moving with a terrifying, predatory grace. She used a piece of illegal weapon hardware, a high-voltage stun device, to neutralize the first man who tried to grab her. I followed, clutching Leo's hand so tightly I feared I might hurt him, but he didn't flinch. We sprinted through the darkness of the backyard, the house behind us erupting into a pillar of orange flame as the gasoline ignited. "There! By the fence!" a voice shouted from the driveway. It was Thomas. We didn't look back. We dove into the narrow opening of the drainage pipe just as the first canisters of gas were tossed into the yard. We crawled through the cold, damp darkness for what felt like miles, the sound of sirens beginning to wail in the distance. Elena led us to a nondescript cabin deep in the woods, a place she had prepared as a fallback. Inside, she pulled out an encrypted laptop and began uploading the contents of the ledger. "The network is deep, Mark," she explained, her fingers flying across the keys. "Thomas isn't the top, but he's high enough to pull the strings. If we go to the local police, we'll be silenced before we reach the precinct. We need the internal security check. We need the people who investigate the investigators." As the data uploaded, I looked through the handwritten notes in the tin. My heart stopped. There, on the final page, was a letter from my wife. She had found out about the organized scheme and had been documenting everything, planning to go to the Internal Security Service the very next day. She knew Thomas was involved. She had tried to save him, to give him a chance to turn himself in, and he had killed her for it. The next morning, we didn't run. We went to the city center, straight to the regional headquarters of the Internal Security Service. We didn't go in the front door. Elena had a contact, a high-ranking official who had been looking for a way to break the group for years. While the internal security agents were verifying the ledger, Thomas was holding a televised press conference in front of the charred remains of my house. He stood there with a handkerchief, dabbing at fake tears, talking to the media about the tragedy of his brother-in-law's secret life as a courier for prohibited substances. "It is a heartbreaking discovery," Thomas told the cameras, his voice cracking with rehearsed emotion. "To think that Mark was using his own son to hide these forbidden activities, I only wish I could have saved them from the explosion." "You always were a terrible liar, Thomas," I said, stepping out from behind a line of black SUVs that had just pulled up. The silence that hit the crowd was absolute. Thomas's face didn't just turn pale, it turned a sickly, ashen gray. He looked at me, then at the internal security agents flanking me, and finally at Leo, who was standing tall, no longer the broken boy Thomas thought he had silenced. Leo walked right up to the microphones. He looked his uncle in the eye, his voice clear and unwavering. "You killed my mommy because she found your secret box, and then you tried to kill us. But you forgot one thing, Uncle Thomas. I was listening the whole time." The internal security team moved with lightning speed. Thomas tried to reach for his weapon, but he was tackled and pinned to the pavement before he could even draw a breath. The radicals he had hired were intercepted across the city within the hour, caught in a coordinated sweep based on the names in the ledger. The fallout was massive. The internal investigation dismantled the entire group, leading to the arrests of judges, officials, and officers who had been part of the organized scheme. Thomas was hit with a mountain of charges: murder, racketeering, and attempted framing. He is currently serving an enormous term, dozens of years in a high-security facility where he will never have the power to hurt anyone again. Elena was granted a full pardon for her cooperation, her past record scrubbed clean. She didn't leave us, though. She became the sister I never had, the protector who stood by us when the world was on fire. As for Leo and me, we built a new home. It's a place filled with light and, more importantly, with sound. The silence that once haunted our lives is gone, replaced by the music of a boy who finally found his voice, and the peace of knowing that the truth is no longer waiting behind the door. It's finally out in the light.